The next question comes from a viewer named Ashinder. And Ashinder says, I also have another question. If we can reach out to God, how would you think people of different race, genders, and mixed genders are treated? Because in the Bible, Jesus states, "Man nor woman should not tamper with thy body I have given them."
Who's going to answer this question, friends? Once again, there's a higher presence stepping up to the microphone, making the detangling movement.
I feel that feeling.
And saying, first let's pull out this statement by the Christ that don't tamper with your bodies. Holding up the vibration of that statement in one hand, and in the other hand holding the vibration of Western medicine, which is simply a system of tampering with the body.
That's true.
And this presence feels like he was charged with the responsibility of bringing Western medicine into its fullness and greatness.
That's true.
And he feels like he has failed completely in all levels and in all ways. Somebody else is pointing to the whole craziness of not letting people die when they die.
That's true.
And jolting them and pretending that God gave us these technologies so that we can use them, when quite clearly Christ said, don't tamper with your body. And now somebody else is saying, what has happened to Christianity? What has happened to it? How has it become such a twisted perversion of what it was designed to be? And so, to Ashinder, we would say that statement of not tampering with the body really needs to be examined and taken to heart, because Western medicine has become the new religion of the 21st century.
That's true.
And that's wrong. And now the question about presences of different race and gender, and now somebody else is answering it, and it feels like a much lighter, much easier question, because they're saying, remember how it is. A soul comes into a body, the soul lives the life, the body dies, the soul rises up again, and souls choose different genders, life by life, and different races, life by life, different ethnicities, life by life.
That's true.
And it's all the same. It's the same soul. When they come back home, hello, come in. What did you do? Is this your signature? What did you do on your sacred vows to Spirit? It doesn't matter what gender they just were. It doesn't matter what race they just were. It doesn't matter what ethnicity they just were. Is this your signature? What did you do on your sacred vows to Spirit? It's all the same. We're all the same, and it doesn't really even matter humans and non-humans. It's actually all the same. It's all the same for humans and non-human animals and plants. And presences who want to argue that plants don't have consciousness seem to be ignorant of the many studies that have shown that plants do in fact have consciousness, because they respond to various stimuli.
That's true.
So they just sound ignorant, and we have to not be judgmental of those people, and to just let it go and not let them confuse us. So this is the easy question. The easy question is, everybody is welcomed in with the same greeting. Is this your signature? What did you do on your sacred vows to Spirit? And if you're not getting that greeting, then you are still stuck in the clouds of dead people, and you're falling into the trap of the fakers and the manipulators, and just keep going up. Does this answer the question?
This next question comes from a viewer named Taylor. And Taylor says, "Hi, could you please discuss, quote, plant medicines such as ayahuasca? Many indigenous cultures have once used these as tools to connect with the divine. However, as Western culture is being drawn toward broader spirituality and, quote, peak experiences, What are the implications of the growing popularity of these medicines? Thank you.
A higher presence is stepping up. I do not believe it to be the same presence. I believe it to be someone who has not yet spoken.
That's true.
But they are still making that detangling motion.
I see that motion.
And they're talking about how important it is to remember the frames of reference in situations that we're dealing with, and how common it is to lose our frames of reference and then lose our way entirely. And the person is feeling sad, the Divine Presence is feeling sad, and talking about, this is Gabriel.
That's who
this is Gabriel.
This is Gabriel. This is the presence known as the Archangel Gabriel.
Archangel Gabriel. And Gabriel is saying, this situation of the clouds of the dead are, this is really bad. Gabriel is saying the most important frame of reference is the situation with the clouds of the dead. They were not backed up 1,000 years ago. They were not backed up 10,000 years ago. They were not backed up 40,000 years ago when shamanism began to come into vogue. And
that's true.
That, therefore, what ayahuasca did 40,000 years ago, and what ayahuasca did 10,000 years ago, and what ayahuasca did 1,000 years ago isn't really relevant.
That's true.
Because the most important thing to keep in mind is that the astral dimensions have collapsed. He started to say are collapsing, and somebody else said, excuse me, what? And he changed it to they have collapsed.
That's
but they
true.
have collapsed. Not that the collapse is complete, but it's like a building that has fallen down, like the World Trade Centers. They fell down, and it took a while to dig out through the rubble.
That's true.
And that's what's happened with the astral dimensions, which are the clouds of the dead. There are too many dead people, and therefore drugs of any kind are extremely unsafe because they abrade or melt the natural resistance to astral attack and being preyed on, P-R-E-Y-E-D, preyed on by out-of-body presences. And to please really listen carefully and remember this and stay away from drugs, please. Now is not the era to be experimenting with drugs. And now the detangling motion is continuing, and they're talking about labeling something a peak experience, and saying, somebody else is saying, and what her friends used to call it in high school was being high.
That's
Just call
right.
it high. People like to get high.
That's true.
And they gather together and get high, and they do it doing all kinds of different things. That's not a peak experience. That's being high.
That's true.
Don't use drugs. Drugs do not have any place in spirituality. Does this answer the question?
Our next question comes from a viewer named Charisse. And Charisse says, please ask why so many of us have gone through an awakening and came out alone, afraid, ungrounded, and without instruction. It feels like torture. It did not enlighten me, only left me with a, quote, knowing, a sense of being stuck between two worlds, and knowing I'll never form a deep attachment to another human being for the rest of my life, because I can never go back to caring about the things they do, certainly not the way they do. My ego has been lifted out, but my mind's been blown.
There are two presences stepping up to the microphone, and one feels very much like a personal connection to Cherise, possibly a personal guardian angel, and another one does not have that personal connection at all, but wants to speak to the larger topic. However, first, the personal guardian angel is saying, don't make it a bad thing that you're not going to have to deal with other humans. Humanity has lost its bearings. Humanity has lost its bearings. Humanity has become a ravening horde, Horde, of bullies. And why would anybody want to have anything to do with a ravening horde of bullies? And so to not see it as a bad thing, and also to understand the time-honored tradition of the cabin in the woods, that this is something that has been practiced by mystics the world over. There are many people, for example, in the Himalayas who live in caves. They live a solitary life alone in a cave in the Himalayas because they have also had the awakening experience. Well, don't make up a story that that's a bad thing.
That's true.
These two host lives are living on retreat from society as much as possible. We try to have as little contact with society as possible because we have to choose. These host lives have to choose. Do they want to be able to hear God, or do they want to relate to people? And
that's true.
Both of these host lives would prefer to relate to God.
To hear God.
To be able to hear divine voices. So don't make it into a bad thing.
That's true.
That other larger divine presence is waiting for the guardian angel to say everything that the guardian angel wants to say, so as to not cut off the personal connection. But the guardian angel's sitting quietly now.
That's
so
true.
We think the microphone is about to shift to that presence that has a more planetary level of responsibility. And they're talking about what it is to be a portal carrier. And they're talking about the Lord of the Rings movies.
That's exactly what they're talking about.
And Frodo. And how Frodo was someone who was able to carry the rings without being as poisoned by it as other people would be poisoned.
That's true.
And that to be a portal carrier is a similar occupation, and what an important and honorable occupation it is to be a person who can hold space for spirit, at least in their own minds and hearts, and to consider that there is actually quite a bit of support to learn how to do this. It does exist.
That's true.
It is not an easy assignment, but obviously since you had this experience, you accepted the assignment before you were born. And nothing else is going to feel right. At the end of the day, when you're old and looking back on your life, if you don't really try this, odds are good you're going to regret not having tried. So to attempt to learn the skills of being in the world but not of the world, you're probably going to have to change everything about your life. There was a student, a wonderful student.
That's right.
Her name was Olivia, and she said, I can see everything in my life has to change, everything. And she set out changing some things.
That's true.
And it did feel overwhelming to her, and she didn't change everything, but she changed some things.
That's true.
And became a better person through the effort. But she could see it. Everything needs to change. Everything. And to just hold that as our working theory, that we need to change everything about our lives. There isn't a single thing that's working as it should be working. They're pointing to yesterday. We had to run an errand. We were in a store, and it had been, we think, 3 weeks maybe since we had left our tiny farmlet.
Maybe 3 weeks, yeah, since that one had left.
Yeah,
this one leaves.
She goes out to work.
Day.
She leaves every day.
That's right.
Going to work. We work at home, and so we're here. People come to us.
That's right.
We don't leave. So we went to the store. And as we were walking through the parking lot toward the doors of the store, the angel said, now, try to find something that anybody actually needs.
Okay.
And that store had a grocery store.
That's true.
In it.
With food, quote unquote.
Things that are called food.
That's right.
And we found so few things that anybody actually needs. There was just aisle after aisle after aisle after aisle of things that nobody should buy.
That's true.
That none of us should buy. It was an enormous store full of things that none of us should buy. It was sad. And so when we're swimming in that soup of nothing being as it should be, it can be very confusing, and how much better it is to get out of that soup for at least a little bit.
That's true.
Does this answer the question? This is one of those questions. The wiser presences are speaking, and they're saying this is one of those questions that has so much depth to it
That's
that
true.
we could pull it apart for half an hour
Or longer.
or half a year.
That's right.
Or half a lifetime.
That's right.
But there are many other questions in the bowl, the bell, so we do need to move on. And that's enough for now.